Howdy readers, I'm Jason. This is Chapter and Verse, and this is the third and final of my 500 subscriber Q&A videos. So Caleb wants me to elaborate on my relationship to and interest in breakfast cereals, which is there. I'm trying to remember, though, what video it might have been where I discussed that in the past. I can't remember. So Caleb, where did you find out that I had this interest in breakfast cereals? Which video was it? I mean, I guess it just goes back to childhood, really. I should start by saying that I genuinely wish someone would write a biography of breakfast cereal, like a cultural biography. You know, Mark Kurlansky has written a biography of cod. He's written one on salt. There are other biographies, quote-unquote biographies, out there on foods. Way back when, at the beginning of it all, we had Kellogg, right, and cornflakes, and the sanatorium, and there in Michigan, I think it was. And then, you know, when I was a kid, I mean, I was just really conscious of the fact that this was the only food out there at the time. This was before Go-Gurt and all that stuff, that was being really marketed to children. And as a child, I found that interesting. I also found it interesting that on the backs of the cereal boxes, there were puzzles and games and stories, that there were toys inside the cereal boxes. In some cases, there were like mini comic books and things inside the cereal boxes. So I've just always been really interested in cereal. Every October, I buy and eat Frankenberry and Count Chocula. I can't stand Blueberry. I think it's disgusting. As a kid, they didn't sell Blueberry in Cheyenne. You couldn't find it anywhere. So I didn't have it until I was probably, I don't know, 30 years old. Was probably the first time I had seen Blueberry. And then when I was, I don't know, maybe 14 years old, 15 years old, couldn't have been 16 years old. One morning I woke up, not by design, but just by chance, before everyone else in my family, and I opened our only box of Fruity Pebbles, and I ate a bowl, and then I ate another bowl, and I ate the whole box in one sitting, and I was in big trouble when my parents woke up, because that was breakfast. So they've always kind of held a special place in my heart, Fruity Pebbles, even though I actually prefer Cocoa Pebbles now, which I think of all the chocolate cereals, I think Cocoa Pebbles results in the best tasting chocolate milk in the bowl. So anyhow, that's just a little bit more about my obsession with breakfast cereals. Matthew L. asks, what is one big important writer that you just don't get or like despite their reputation? And as some of you might already know, if you've been watching my channel for a while, I can't stand Haruki Murakami. Now, yes, granted, I have only read one of his novels, Kafka on the Shore, but that novel was so terrible in so many ways, and so obviously terrible. It was pedantic, it was immature. I mean, there was a moment in it where I think we were treated to a kind of sexual dream or fantasy of a female character, and it was so obviously a male sexual fantasy or dream, just kind of imposed onto a female character. It was obviously from the mind of Murakami. You know, it was a hang-up of his own, whatever was in the dream, I can't even remember now. But yeah, I mean, he is talked about every year as a kind of perennial favorite for the Nobel Prize in literature. And, you know, if Kafka on the Shore is any indication of what the rest of his body of work is like, I don't want anything else to do with the writer. I'm sorry. That was just an out-and-out failure of a novel. So, Haruki Murakami is my answer to that question. Lukash at Totally Pretentious asks, since I know you're a Christian, I'm wondering what you think of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So, I suppose in short, my answer would be that I tend to think of them as another denomination of Christianity. However, I think it's an odd denomination. I think it's a denomination that doesn't have nearly as much to do with Christ as it should. I have a good friend here in town who is a Mormon. We talk about religion a lot when we go out to lunch, for instance. And and he told me that the Mormon Church, that there's always one prophet alive on earth. And I don't remember the name of the guy who's the prophet now on earth. But having a prophet in the church alive at any given time can't but take one's eye at least a little off of Christ. And one's eye shouldn't be taken off of Christ if one is a Christian, if one believes in Scripture. Christ needs to be at the center. And in the Mormon Church, it doesn't seem to me, that doesn't seem to be the case to me in the Mormon Church. Another thing about the religion that I find really puzzling, in Genesis, right, this idea of us having been created in God's image, the Mormons believe that literally in the sense of, like, they believe that God is knowable, that God actually has a body. I'm not talking about Jesus now, right? God taking on flesh in the form of Jesus Christ. I am talking about God himself. I am talking about the great kind of unknowable Lord. And the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints believes that God, I think they believe that God has a physical body, that we actually look like God looks. And I find that really baffling and strange. That would mean that God has a, digestive system, and that God goes to the bathroom. And if that's the case, like, what would be the point of God coming down in the form of Jesus, right? To find out what it is to be human, to live as a human. It would make the life of Christ pointless, in my view, in some ways. I don't know. I mean, when I think of that idea of man being born in the image of God, I look at the soul. And I really feel like the soul is who we are. I am not my fingernails. I am not my toes. I am not the hairs on my nose. I am not my digestive tract. My identity, who I am, what I am, is my soul. And so when I think of us being born in the image of God, I think of God as pure soul. Paul Kennedy asks, if you could visit a location anywhere in the world where a book was set or where a scene from a book took place, where would it be and why? I'm actually going to go with a film. I'm sorry, Paul, but I wanted to talk with you guys about Wings of Desire, right? The Wim Wenders movie about angels overlooking the people of Berlin. And in 2004, I went to London, spent almost 3 weeks in London, and in the midst of that trip, I went to Germany and spent a few days in Germany. And while in Germany, I went to Berlin. And the whole point of going to Berlin, for me, was to see the Siegessäule, which is this giant sculpture or statue, I should say, of an angel on a pillar. And the angels in this film kind of hang out on that statue. They sit on its wings, they sit below it, etc., etc. It's kind of their home base, if you will. And I really wanted to see it in person and to go up into the tower, and I was able to, and I was able to come out right at the base of the statue. It's like I was in Wings of Desire for just a moment. Kaylin Reeds asks, what is your vote for PBS's Great American Read? So I don't know, Kaylin, if you have seen my earlier videos on the Great American Read project, but I'm not really a fan of what PBS is doing. Well, that's not true. I'm not really a fan of how PBS is doing what they're doing with that project. So I will link to those videos of mine below. But I had a look this morning as to the current top 10 vote getters in the Great American Read Project. And of that current top 10 right now, Jane Eyre is, for me, far and clear the best of those 10 books. Thomas Roy asks, when studying English literature at university, what was your favorite class you took or book you studied? As an undergrad, I would say my favorite class was either Victorian poetry or the class I took in war films. Yeah, those were pretty extraordinary experiences. And then in graduate school, it would have to be the class I took in Dickens, which was actually an advanced undergrad class. And so to take it as a graduate student, I had to read one additional Dickens novel, and I had to teach Great Expectations. And it was just a joy. It was just a pleasure. It was just wall-to-wall Charles Dickens for 3.5 months. Lillian Niecevender, is it Niecevender or Niecewender? Lillian asks, what is the difference between crocheting and knitting? So knitting uses 2 needles, and it's something I can't do. I have tried to learn it to really no avail. I'll probably attempt it again in the future. I have Knitting for Dummies, but it uses 2 needles, and it kind of just pulls the yarn back and forth onto these needles, making a stitch. Crocheting is done with just one. It's like a needle with a hook on the end. And so I will try to interject here a close-up of my crocheting, just so you can see at least what crocheting looks like in close-up. Mark Nash asks, a serious literary fiction book from Europe or Africa that you've never read gets made into a movie with glowing reviews, but it's not playing in Wyoming, though it is available on import DVD. Which do you tackle first, the book or the movie? If it was a novel unknown to me, I would definitely seek out the film first. Now, I wouldn't be able to order the import DVD and play it because I do not have a region-free Blu-ray and DVD player. I would look to see if the film was playing down in Colorado. I have been known to travel to Fort Collins, to Boulder, even to Denver, just to see a film on the big screen. So that's what I would do. If it was a director I really, really loved, I would find the film. I would find some way of seeing the film first. Bookish asks, if you could take a fishing trip anywhere in the world, where would you go and what would you fish for? So there is a little tiny lake in a park in Cheyenne where I grew up called Sloan's Lake. And that, to my knowledge, that's the only place in and around Cheyenne where you can actually fish for bass. And I love fishing for bass. So I would come down to Texas and go fishing with you, Brian. And I would bring my brother with me and my old poetry instructor, Scott Starbuck. Maybe on one of those flat-bottom boats that you see on the fishing shows. Never fished from a boat like that before, so that'd be fun. Yeah, that'd be a lot of fun. We could talk about Cormac McCarthy while fishing. And then lastly, our giveaway winner, Joe Smith, asks, if you could inhabit the world of any novel, which one would it be? And it would definitely be The Wind in the Willows, the world of the riverbank. I think anyone who's read this book would likely have the same answer to that question. It's weird, I've been in like a holding pattern the last 3 weeks or so with my subscriber count. It's been hovering right around 550, 555 for almost a month. That's a little strange, but that's fine. I'm absolutely fine with 555 people. I would rather have 555 extraordinary people who were genuinely interested in what I had to say and in communicating with me and each other than, 20,000 people who, just kind of click subscribe on whatever they come across. I'm not interested in that. So I'm really, really grateful to have all of you subscribing to my channel. So I will see you guys again soon. Adios.